Stratified samples are when we want to evenly represent each subset of a population with a survey. And 90% of you are sitting there going, subset, population, represent. In your context, or in this Mercy School context, what would that mean?
Like if you want to do a survey of like kids who like whether kids like homework or don't like homework, you group them in kids who get A's, B's, C's, D's, and then E's, and you use surveys from that to come to fully
Very good. So you've identified your subgroups as academic achievement levels. A standard, B standard, C standard, D standard, E standard. Now if I was to fairly represent that population, if I had 100 groups, would I have 20 of each? Let's think about that. If I wanted to represent those subgroups, the A kids, the B kids, the C kids, etc., if I wanted to group them in a way that was fair, would I get 20 from each group? Some say it's fair. Does everyone agree with that? I don't. Arnie doesn't. Why not?
Because that hasn't thing that he told us last.
The French Revolution?
Yeah.
So you've evenly broken up the groups, haven't you? Are those groups, do you think those groups, A kids, B kids, C kids, D kids, E kids, do you think they're equal in size?
No.
Do you think when I'm doing report cards, I give as many kids E's as I do C's or B's or A's or D's? Is it the same? It's pretty uncommon to get an E, isn't it? It's pretty hard to get an A. Most students sit in the B, C, D category, don't they?
Yeah.
That's what you see on most report cards. Some of you might disagree with that point of view. So how should I represent it?
By splitting your representations into even percentages for each group.
I like that word. He said percentages. So if 40% of my kids were on a B, how many of my 100 should I take out of that B group? What did someone say? Why should I take 40?
you take all, so say you had 100 kids and then 5% or something were A's and you take all 5.
So you take 5% of your kids. If you had 5% A's, you take 5 kids out of 100. And your B's were 40%, you would take 40 out of 100. So with my subsets, what should they do when I'm putting them into subgroups? Do I just break them up evenly? So I've just written there, thanks Dylan for expressing physics and wave motion. If you'd like to run through that with me at a later stage, I'm more than happy. I work well at lunchtimes if you want. You're all good? You're fully booked? All right, we might find out what proportion or percentage, we must, not might, we must find out what proportion or percentage of the whole population our subgroup represents. What does that mean? Olivia.
Just assume that because there's 5 options that none will have the same amount of people who don't have
Very,
the numbers and see how many people get.
very good. And the example I gave last lesson right at the end was around the French Revolution. And the reason behind that. When they decided to go towards a democratic system, the nobility or the lords in the higher class, they had a third of the votes. The clergy had a third of the votes, and then the peasants had the other third of the votes. Now the peasants made up 90% of the population. There were 3 classes, they broke it into 3 votes. Why did that cause the French Revolution?
Because so many more peasants that they were going there, so.
So were they represented fairly in the court or not?
No.
They were underrepresented, which meant that they could be picked on and had laws passed that didn't favour them. Happy with that? And they got cranky. You know how the rest of the story goes. So stratified samples, we need to find out what percentage of the whole population are subgroups. So in that peasant scenario, if they made up 90% of the population, what percentage of the vote should they have?
90%.
90% of the vote. In a schooling context, I'm going to give you, let's say that the school was made up of, let's give you an example, all right? I want to create a stratified sample. I've got 50 samples I can use. So I can use 50 samples. I'm not going to tell you much more than I'm going to give you. Our school has, it's 25, no it's not, it's 20% year 10. It's 26% year 9. 24% year 8, and it's 30% year 7. I want you to identify how many kids I should sample from each grade. I'm not going to tell you much more, I want you to think.